Section 16a, the doctrine of no soul anatta continued. The Buddha's silence. Much has been written on the subject of the Buddha's silence when a certain parivrajaka named Vacchagotta asked him whether there was an Atman or not. The story is as follows. Vacchagotta comes to the Buddha and asks, Venerable Gotama, is there an Atman? The Buddha is silent. Then, Venerable Gotama, is there no Atman? Again, the Buddha is silent. Vacchagotta gets up and goes away. After the parivrajaka had left, Ananda asked the Buddha why he did not answer Vacchagotta's question. The Buddha explains his position. Ananda, when asked by Vacchagotta, the wanderer, is there a self? If I had answered, there is a self, then, Ananda, that would be siding with those recluses and brahmanas who hold the eternalist theory. And, Ananda, when asked by the wanderer, is there no self? If I had answered, there is no self, then that would be siding with those recluses and brahmanas who hold the annihilationist theory. Again, Ananda, when asked by Vacchagotta, is there a self? If I had answered, there is a self, would that be in accordance with my knowledge that all dhammas are without self? Surely not, sir. And again, Ananda, when asked by Vacchagotta, is there no self? If I had answered, there is no self, then that would have been a greater confusion to the already confused Vacchagotta. For he would have thought, formerly, indeed, I had an Atman or self, but now I haven't got one. It should now be quite clear why the Buddha was silent. But it will be clearer if we take into consideration the whole background and the way the Buddha treated questions and questioners, which is altogether ignored by those who have discussed this problem. The Buddha was not a computing machine giving answers to whatever questions were put to him by another at all without any consideration. He was a practical teacher, full of compassion and wisdom. He did not answer questions to show his knowledge and intelligence, but to help the questioner on the way to realization. He always spoke to people bearing in mind their standard of development, their tendencies, their mental makeup, their character, their capacity to understand a particular question. According to the Buddha, there are 4 ways of treating questions. 1. Some should be answered directly. 2. Others should be answered by way of analyzing them. 3. Yet others should be answered by counter questions. And lastly, 4. There are questions which should be put aside. There may be several ways putting aside a question. One is to say that a particular question is not answered or explained, as the Buddha had told this very same Vacchagotta on more than one occasion. When those famous questions, whether the universe is eternal or not, etc., were put to him. In the same way, he had replied to Malunkyaputta and others. But he could not say the same thing with regard to the question whether there is an Atman or not, because he had always discussed and explained it. He could not say there is self, because it is contrary to his knowledge that all dhammas are without self. Then he did not want to say there is no self, because that would unnecessarily, without any purpose, have confused and disturbed poor Vacchagotta, who was already confused on a similar question, as he had himself admitted earlier. He was not yet in a position to understand the idea of anatta. Therefore, to put aside this question by silence was the wisest thing in this particular case. We must not forget, too, that the Buddha has known Vajragata quite well for a long time. This was not the first occasion on which this inquiring wanderer had come to see him. The wise and compassionate teacher gave much thought and showed great consideration for this confused seeker. There are many references in the Pali texts to the same Vajragata the wanderer. He is going round quite often to see the Buddha and his disciples and putting the same kind of question again and again. Evidently, very much worried, almost obsessed by these problems, the Buddha's silence seemed to have had much more effect on Vajragata than any eloquent answer or discussion. Some people take self to mean what is generally known as mind or consciousness. But the Buddha says that it is better for a man to take his physical body as self rather than mind, thought, or consciousness, because the former seems to be more solid than the latter. Because mind, thought, or consciousness changes constantly, day and night, even faster than the body.